Welcome to Guitar Hunter Live for May 28th. I think this is like one a week. I think we're into the high 20s now. I don't know if we're at 30 weeks yet. Sometime I'll do the math and figure it out. But Shadi got his D28 here. Shadi in Cairo. Where are you guys coming from? I'm coming from the amazing Shenandoah Valley. Beautiful part of the world. And I'm playing a guitar that is made in the Shenandoah, well, it's not technically the valley, in the Allegheny Valley. This guitar is made by Ben Paget. This is a Paget Model 1, and this guitar is astounding. And I went over and I got to play this and its twin, the first two Paget guitars that will be for sale. Shot a video with Ben, and so we'll get all that together here soon. And it snowed yesterday for Jeff. Crazy. It is beautiful and warm and nice here. And yeah, so I'll play guitar for a second until we get some more people. Mike Pinion, how's your mom and them? Up a little bit. All right, how is that? It's telling me that's clipping. It's not clipping in OBS. That's about as loud as I can get it on here. I can move the mic closer to me. Oh boy, sorry Ben. Hang on. Is that in the shot? Oh, you can see that. Well. Okay, well, you're going to have to, you'll see it a little bit today. Actually, let me see if I can do it this way. Just the tiniest little bit. Hey, there we go. Okay, can't see it. Should be a lot better. Tom. Oh, yeah. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. Thank you to our servicemen and women. My brother was in the Navy. My brother-in-law is in the Air Force. I mean, this is a good weekend. It's a good weekend to be thankful. It's also kind of the unofficial start to summer. So is there a slight audio-video sync issue for everyone else? There might be. So I'll give you a couple quick updates that's really fun. The first one is this week I worked with Sweetwater. So this is like my fourth or fifth week in the studio. And so had a call this morning with Sweetwater trying to figure out sound treatment, because I've done some, but there's going to be a lot more. And then the next thing is I'm going to be upgrading some mics. I'm going to be upgrading my interface. Going to be just updating all of the things in which I use to make YouTube videos. So should be super fun and awesome. So anyway, well, I'm so glad you guys are here. David, what? David's only 45 minutes from the Martin factory. Jealous. I would like to go. Jose, hey buddy. How much relief do you guys set up your guitars with? Light 4,000ths or standard setup 10? I don't know. I'm not a numbers guy. I go on the feel of guitars. I always get asked those kind of techie questions, and that's just not my style. Definitely, there are some people. So it's a little off. I don't know what to do. All of my settings are the same. And Facebook or YouTube is telling me that I have an excellent connection and no latency. So I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll work on it. But I am so glad that y'all are here. Today's going to be super fun. A lot of fun stuff going on. And so we'll jump into some announcements. Boom. Look at that. Fancy. Cutting edge. In the announcements, we're giving away a guitar, a Gibson LGO. And listen, I mean, it's been so cool hearing the nominations so far. There aren't a ton. I think there are less than 100, which it still is, it's going to be really hard for me because there's only one guitar to give away. And but it's just really sweet hearing people just go to bat so hard for their friends, their spouses, their roommates, their parents. It's just really, really cool. Yeah. And so the LGO, so there's a link in the description below if you want to enter that, if you want a chance to win that guitar. There's still another chance. You have another full week, I think. Actually, so it ends, the details are all in there. We will draw next week. So I'm going to get the top 3, and then I'm going to have some friends review videos with me and just kind of see where we think the best and most, I hate to say most deserving, because so many people really deserve to have a great guitar. So, anyway, with all that said, you still have a couple more days until the end of June. So you have 3 days. January, February, March, April, May. Okay, 31 days in May. So you've got, 4 days, 3 days. So get that in if you can. I know that would be a really great thing for whoever gets it. Super excited. Thanks, Chris Moon. Just such a generous, just a lion heart to get that into the hands of players. So super exciting. Tom's going to see Sean. You talking about Sean from Scar My Guitar? He's a good dude. He's awesome. So just kind of general update from this week. So this week on Monday, I went and hung out with Ben Padgett at Padgett Guitars in Monterey, Virginia, which I've said it's just the freaking Shire. It's just such a beautiful place. And Ben and I hung out most of the day and talked guitars, and I got to play 2 of his guitars, and I brought a couple other guitars for him to see. That video will be out here soon. I also have been able to hire an editor, not on every video, but on some of them. So I put out a video, the last recap of how we turned this from a garage into a studio, and it's going to be really cool. And yeah, the new space is really fun, and there are a couple things that we're really working on. So I mentioned earlier, like Sweetwater, I'm working on a new interface, new monitors. I need to buy a new computer monitor. I'm going to mount some stuff on the wall so I can still use this rolling desk. Because basically I can turn this desk 90 degrees and use it for the live show and for other things. But I love this space. And it only happens through the kindness, friendship, the generosity of patrons and people that watch these videos and subscribe. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you are. I know that everyone tells you, but I will say there is a pretty direct correlation between you subscribing and YouTube paying us more as YouTubers. And so, right now I don't make much money from ad revenue. I don't make, anyway, I can share more of that at some point, but, yeah. So anyways, but I've had this guitar since Monday, and I just think that Ben is a wizard of acoustic guitars. Nope. Anyway, okay. Without just rambling and just wandering around. So I'll tell you a little bit about this guitar. So it's a very white piece of spruce, and then this rosette is the blue is maple burl, And then the orange is Cocobolo, which is actually the Cocobolo from the other guitar that he made. And then all the black lines are ebony. So he cut every piece of ebony. Every tiny little strip between those pieces is ebony that he had to process. So he said that this was just an incredibly time-sensitive piece of this guitar. And then the next one over here is the headstock, which I just think is so beautiful. And so that's his logo inlaid. Same thing, maple burl and ebony and Cocobolo. On the back of the headstock is a really crispy, beautiful rosette. And man, it's just such a great guitar. So that was probably the most fun thing I got to do guitar-wise this week. So let me put it back. I also shot a video on this Walden back here. A really, really fun guitar. If a baritone isn't on your radar, it should be. So anyway, man, it's just that guitar. Super cool. So with all of that said, any other announcements? I am working on a couple courses. That's the next direction for the channel. So you're starting to see some of my first thoughts, and that's what we'll talk about today. Some of my first thoughts on really helping as many guitar players in the world as I can buy the right guitar faster, find the better guitars, and not waste time and money and energy on it. So, yeah, Guitar Squad says it looks like stained glass. It really does. And I'll have a bunch of better pictures for it later on. So, with all of that said, let me turn my phone on Do Not Disturb so I don't get distracted, because there's enough distraction already. So, all right. And so, general itinerary, what we're going to do. And so, yeah, general update is we're going to go through 5. So there are 5 kinds of guitars, and I'm going to go through each of those kinds of guitars and how they belong in your collection and how you would make mistakes and buy the wrong one of each of those archetypes. Now, this is not a comprehensive explanation, but this is the most helpful thing that I know how to do. And it's just a fun way to spend a Friday afternoon. So let's dig in. So I gotta scoot this way. I'll bring the mic with me a little bit. So the first one, how to buy the wrong guitar for you. First, we need to make sure we know what actually is the right guitar for you. And so typically there are 5 kinds of guitars that belong in kind of a normal guitar collection. This isn't comprehensive, but this is just as I have looked at my collection and what I see in other people's collections. There's generally these kind of archetypes. So if you're saying you're telling a story, this would be kind of the most normal characters that you would expect. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Ocean's 11, all those kinds of things. So with all of that said, the first kind of guitar that you would expect to see is the Workhorse. This is a reliable, fun, useful guitar that shows up to every show with you and just brings home the bacon. Just works really well for you. So for me, this is my Haas & Dalton TDM. TDM is basically kind of a hot-rodded D18. Mahogany top, or mahogany back and sides, spruce top. For me, this is just a guitar that will just show up and work really hard. And yeah. So the second kind of guitar is the Old Faithful. Something old, something cool, and something just fun and reliable that you can use to record, you can use to write. So for me, I have a couple that fit into this category. My Martin D41, it really fits in this. It's cool, it's capable, it's older, it's got some funky mojo. It is super specific in its tone. It sounds like an old folk guitar, sounds like Neil Young. I also have, on kind of an extended loan, I have a this one back over my shoulder here, is a J45 from the early 60s, super thumpy, super J45 sounding. Those guitars are just fun, reliable, cool. Now the third one is your glory days. This is a guitar that is just from your prime. So for me, it's my Tom DeLonge. Where is it? Oh, it's back here. So this is a guitar that is just full on, like, this is your thing. This is just a glorious, cool guitar. And so for me, I've had this guitar since I was 2014. Yeah, 2001, 14. This guitar has been smashed, beat up, played, drug around. Every part on it has been changed. I just recently put a Duncan Invader in it, and it was a bad choice. I'm going to go back to the Seymour Duncan Antiquity. But yeah, so anyway, very cool, very capable. I keep saying that word, capable. Anyway, so that's the other one, your glory days. And that one will vary the most to who you are and to when you kind of came up in the guitar playing world. The next one is the groundbreaker. Groundbreaker is something that forces you to do things you don't know how to do. This is the cutting edge of your guitar playing, your musicianship. So this is a weird instrument. This is a weird feature set. This is something, maybe not weird, but just different than what you've done before. And then the last one is the wild card, bitches. If you watch Always Sunny. Wild card. So the last one is just your total weird thing that is confusing, different, totally unusual. You're not going to see another one. So that's generally, let's see how fast I can do them. The Workhorse, the Old Faithful, the Glory Days, the Groundbreaker, and the Wild Card. Those are generally the kind of archetypes. So now I want to give just some ways in which I see people regularly make mistakes in the kind of guitars that they buy. Let me put the Tom DeLonge back. I'm going to maximize this so I can see what I'm actually talking about. The Workhorse is like the Workhorse, and we talked about this. It is reliable, it is diverse, it is capable, it is just, it will show up and it will work hard. It will stay in tune if you play outside. It'll stay in tune if you've been playing for 3 hours in a, hot, sweaty bar. It's good. Now, the ways that people buy the wrong Workhorse guitar, number one is peer pressure. You buy the wrong guitar because everyone tells you that that's what you should have. Like when people say a D28 is an everyman's guitar, it is not. Like a D28, a Rosewood Dreadnought, a Les Paul, these kinds of guitars, yes, they are cool for a lot of people, but they are certainly not for everyone. I would not recommend a Les Paul to most people. Unless you really are able to spend a ton of time with it. Now, they are reliable and they stay in tune other than the G strings on the Les Pauls. But the peer pressure to buy a certain kind of guitar is really powerful and unfortunately makes lots of people waste a lot of money on guitars. Now, I'm not saying waste like they've lost all of it, but the amount of D28s that people buy and then a year later they're like, I can't sing over it. So I'm either going to sing less, like you'll just let insecurity overtake you and you don't sing, or you play guitar weird, and the amount of people that it just doesn't work for. Now, the second one is that people are just too critical of a Workhorse guitar. Because listen, it kind of reminds me of Tommy Boy. So you remember in Tommy Boy where they talk about, man, my phone's on Do Not Disturb, I'm still seeing stuff. In Tommy Boy, he talks about the warranty's got to be on the box. It's like, well, the warranty, it could be a piece of crap, but it's got a warranty on the box. And I think that people are too critical of guitars, and they're too finicky about like the grain of the wood, and just way too picky overall. Especially if this guitar is going to play the role of a workhorse. Like this guitar is just going to work with you and show up and just get shit done. I think too many people are too critical of those guitars. You can be picky, but anyway, I think that it more often than not will get in the way a lot. Now the second one is I think that, that was the second one. The third one I think is that people put way too much trust into message boards and opinions and spec sheets rather than their ears and their hands, because it's harder to make your own opinion, and it's harder to, realistically, it's just really hard to get to a guitar store these days and to go play a guitar and to be out and about. That's where, so the, coming back to one of the thoughts, like when people are too critical, when people are like, well, there was a little bit of binding or a little bit of buffing compound on the inside of the sound hole. You're like, okay, you can clean that off. That's not hard. and don't be a baby, you know, like, because that guitar is going to get sweaty and hot and handprints on it. And, you know, if you play in the right places, you'll get some beer spilled on it. I remember I had a Martin SWD GT that I loved. I played thousands of shows with that guitar. And so I used to be in youth ministry. And, you know, so you're like playing music to high school kids. And this kid, you know how you can like hold a penny in your hand and you can flick it and it'll shoot? So this kid, Zach, freaking punk. Zach is at the back of the room where we're having Young Life Club, and he flicks, and a quarter goes through the air, and it hits just dead center above the sound hole on my guitar, and I loved this guitar. And that was the first, like, big ding in a guitar, and I wanted to fight him. So, all of that to say, like, don't be too critical on the front end, because if it's your workhorse, stuff is going to happen to it. It's going to get, you know, dinged up, beat up, you know, coins flicked at it. It's going to get bonked on the door. I mean, that same guitar probably a year later, I put my strap on and the strap was curled backwards. I mean, you've been there where it like twists over and then it's just kind of holding and then all of a sudden it just drops. And so when it dropped, that guitar just bang off the floor. And it was, you know, concrete floor with a little skinny Berber carpet. So anyway, all of that to say, in the workhorse guitar, like, you just have to remember, like, the role that guitar is going to play with you. It's going to go with you, and it's going to get beat up. So, workhorse guitars, they need to be something you don't think about. They need to be a guitar that seamlessly works with you to get the job done. You don't have to think about how far out it is. You don't have to think about the scale length being different. You don't have to think about it. It's just you making music, interacting with people, you know. So, anyway. That's all I have to say for the workhorse guitar. Now, the other one is the Old Faithful. Now, Old Faithful, and I can show you mine. Mine is this beautiful guitar. So, this is a 1970 Martin D41. Oh, it's so... It's very terribly out of tune and has dead strings. So this is East Indian rosewood back inside. It's not Brazilian, but this is, you know, old, second year of production. And I have this guitar because it's kind of my hero's guitar. Now, truth be told, I don't really like the way this guitar sounds yet. I'm hoping that it will change when we get the neck reset. I also don't like how it plays. So I just want to say I'm on the fence with this guitar. Even though this guitar has an amazing story on how it came back to me, it's really hard that I just don't actually like the way it sounds. So this is my Old Faithful. These are something, like, this is just an old guitar that is cool. And when people see it, I mean, this is also kind of a vain guitar, because when people see it, they're like, that is cool. And I love Neil Young, and he's always played a D45 that looks very similar to this. And so with me, I'm just like, it's just so cool. My heroes played this guitar. So the way that you would buy these wrong, that you would either buy these wrong or just buy the wrong guitar, is the first one is you would just get in way over your head, which is so incredibly easy to do with old Martins, with old Gibsons, with old Fenders, old guitars. There are especially electric guitars. So many things can be changed, and if you don't know, there's a substantial, huge difference. Like if you buy a Strat and you don't know that the harness has been changed and the bridge pickup has been routed out to a humbucker, we're talking thousands of dollars lost in value. So, I mean, I'm totally, it is easy to get in over your head, which is why you just have to go slow and really know what you're talking about. Ask 1,000 questions if you're really fortunate to have a good guitar shop or a good repair person that you can just hang around to ask questions. I had an unfair advantage working in a vintage guitar shop because I just got to spend so much time around these old guitars. And yeah, so anyway, yeah, so the second one is you would miss damage or repairs. I kind of alluded to this with the Strat and the pickups. Same thing with a Les Paul. You know, if it's a guitar that should have PAFs, which, I mean, you're not going to wander into one of those. But if you're looking for patent number pickups from the 60s and then all of a sudden they're actually DiMarzios from the 80s, giant difference in value, in price. So there's just plenty of ways. There are just plenty of ways that you would get yourself into trouble. And the third one is peer pressure. And this is the biggest one. Like, you would spend too much money on a guitar like this because of peer pressure for a lot of reasons. But the biggest ones that I want to talk about are the fact that this is a dreadnought. I firmly believe that dreadnoughts are waning in popularity. Now, that's definitely not true, but I think it is headed to be true or will be true soon. Because you look at this entire new generation. So Ben Padgett, that guitar that I just had, you look at the fact that, I looked at the chat, I got distracted. But with this guitar, when you look at Ben Padgett new guitars coming out, there are all of these amazing builders that are doing things no one's ever done before, but they're also really like honoring some cool guitar traditions. And most of those guitars are not dreadnoughts. I mean, look at Iris guitars. Most of theirs aren't actually dreadnoughts. You look at, who else? Boucher does a lot of dreadnoughts, but they're also doing a lot of OMs and hybrids and smaller body guitars. So the role of peer pressure. There's the role of peer pressure. I saw it there's like a Martin owners group on Facebook that I saw a comment today that was like, is a Martin made in Mexico really a Martin? And it's just, I think that is part of the problem. I think that's just like straight gatekeeping to make people feel bad. You are just putting on peer pressure to support whatever decision you've made. And the reality is, I mean, I would bet they've probably made more Martins in Mexico than they've made in the US. I don't know if that's true. I want to find out. But there are some really great sounding Martins that came from Mexico. And, they are the same. Now I understand. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to that. But I think there's a lot of peer pressure to play a dreadnought. Let me put this back and then I'll talk about something else. The other big source of peer pressure that you see with these is you start seeing people putting so much pressure to own a Brazilian guitar. That a Brazilian rosewood guitar from pre-1969, pre-69, a Martin or a La Prenzi or a Gibson or whatever, that they are inherently better, that there's no comparison, that they are the absolute best and everything else is a cheap imitation. And that you have to have Brazilian. Now, this is probably the most central, just baloney. Just not true, not even close to being true. Personally, I'm just now like discovering enough courage in myself to say like, I don't think Brazilian sounds that much different than East Indian. And I don't think rosewood sounds that good for me. Like, it's not my tone. I'm finally coming into the place in which like my taste really is mahogany guitars, because they're less boomy, they're more even as far as volume, they're not as woofy, they're easier to sing with, they're easier to play with other people. To me, I think there's so much peer pressure to have Brazilian guitars. The other like main place of peer pressure and gatekeeping is that when anyone says, well, it's not a real guitar unless it's a pre-whatever. Because listen, each guitar that you like, there's some group that's going to say, well, they used to be better. They used to be better before CBS bought them. Or they were all better before the war. And so there's this deep pressure for you to have a pre-war Martin where you're like, good Lord, I've owned one pre-war Martin, which was a 1937. And that's I think the only one that normal people could afford. And even then it was crazy money, was a 37 Martin 0017. And that guitar I got for $2,500. They sold it for $3,300. It's not that much. I remember because I've owned a bunch of 0017s and they all seem to be about the same price. The thing is, the one that sounded the best to me is actually probably the newest. It was a 1958 that I got for $900. Bought it from a guy on a shrimping boat in New Orleans, or in way south in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana. Tom asked a great question, which is, other than mahogany, including rosewood, or excluding rosewood, so other than mahogany and not rosewood, what are other good options for solid back and sides? I love cherry. I think that cherry is a wonderful tone wood. That's what's on my Waterloo. It's also on that Martin SWD GT, which is my favorite Martin. I think it's the coolest sounding Martin under $2,000. It's a sleeper. You don't see many of them. They just sound great. They used to offer it in the Martin custom shop. Now, other tone woods that are really good, walnut. So both cherry and walnut can be grown in the U.S., can be grown sustainably, can be grown ethically, and are beautiful to look at. Now, walnut is much better to look at. Like I said, this big piece of wood back behind me is American black walnut. Maple is another great one. Maple is incredibly sustainable. Even around here, so that's one of the things I was talking to you about with Ben, is that there's all of this beautiful curly maple. So he lives in Highland County, Virginia, which is the maple syrup capital of Virginia. And so as you're driving around, you see all these maple trees in the woods, and they all have the lines coming out for the tree sap to make maple syrup. But those trees also, when they live long enough, I think it's 50 or 60 years, and they get to where they're not, something happens, they're not as good for maple syrup, then they get cut down for lumber. So maple is another great one. Then you have many other kinds of guitars. Cocobolo is technically rosewood. It's cool. It's impossibly heavy, which is kind of amazing. So this guitar that Ben made, he has one made of mahogany and one made of Cocobolo, and the Cocobolo is twice the weight. It's kind of crazy. Like they were both in identical cases. At the end of the day, Ben was like, "Why don't you take one with you?" And we didn't know which one was which, and he literally picked up the cases and could tell which one was heavier. And then we double checked, but it was he could tell even with the case closed. Sapelli is good. I think Sapelli is related to mahogany. Koa is another great one. Yeah, Jeff is on it. Maton. So James says Australian guitar makers Maton are making a lot of great guitars with the Victorian Blackwood backing size. Yep. Amazing sounding guitars, very similar to mahogany. I've heard really good things. Taylor has always been one of the best proponents of using like Babinga, using Zeracote. Zeracote is beautiful. It reminds me so much of when you see old, twisty, swirly, crazy Brazilian, that with those really inky, I think Zeracote is a great one. So all of that to say, when you're looking for the old faithful guitars, there's so much pressure to buy a pre-war. There's so much pressure to buy a pre-CBS or pre-Norlin. Like every guitar company you like, at some point, peer pressure or like popular opinion went, oh, well, these are bad now. And so there's all this like crazy peer pressure. So when you are looking at those guitars, you just have to really dig deep, do a bunch of research, and Oh, Eric says, have you seen Showalter Guitars Black Walnut? I haven't. So he emailed me and texted me with a handful of mutual friends. And so I'm trying to get together with him. I've just been swamped with all this stuff. But yeah, so all that to say, when you're looking at these vintage guitars, you just have to really dig into what you're looking at. And then like go slow. Don't feel pressure. Don't feel like I have to buy it or I'll miss it. Because there are a bunch of them out there and they're still around. And don't go crazy. So, okay. So that's how to buy the wrong guitar if you're looking at the old faithful archetype. Now the next one is your glory days. This one is so fun. I already talked about my Tom DeLonge. So glory days are just like full-blown nostalgia, and they're just from your glory days. So they're awesome. The biggest way that you would buy the wrong nostalgic guitar, the wrong glory days guitar, is that you'd miss the boat. So whatever time period you were getting into guitar, most people, like when they think of their glory days, it's like 18 to 22, that kind of stretch, like college, high school-ish. So for me, it's like a black Les Paul Custom with gold hardware, like a Black Beauty, because Claudio from Coiled and Cambria played one. Like that's a guitar that I'm like, that is so cool. I would love to own one of those. And so with that, the biggest problem is that you would miss the boat. So I wasn't able to buy one of those guitars when I was in high school. I had an Epiphone. It was okay. It was a blemish. The headstock was all funky. The finish wasn't right. And I sold that guitar, I was like 19 or so. I sold that guitar. And I bought a Kirk Hammett LTD, which was awesome. But I missed the boat on that guitar. And that's what most people, that's the problem you're going to have. You're going to miss the boat when you were nostalgic and then they're hard to find for a while. And they might not be that expensive, but you just missed the boat and can't find them. And then all of a sudden they're going to show up and they're going to be super expensive. And I'll cover that here in a second. The second one is that you would buy specs over feel, especially if you bought a guitar that if you didn't have it when you were in high school. So for me, my Tom DeLonge has been with me since middle school. It's never left. It's always been around. I've always played this guitar, and it's grown and changed with me. Like, it's moved to where I've tried to make it much more capable because it's a one pickup, one volume guitar. So I've tried to make it more versatile to do all the things I want to do, or at least not just one thing. A few months ago, I put a Seymour Duncan Invader back in it, and it's back to doing one thing only. It only can do like squashy, crunchy punk rock, like palm mutes. Like, that's what it's made to do. It's like 21, I think it's 18 megs. It's just, or 18 ohm, nope, 18K, whatever the K means. So Daniel, if you want to email me, or Daniel, so you can, there's a form on my website and there's contact, or you can go to my LinkedIn page or Facebook. You can send me a Facebook message, any of those. Jeff paid $1,600 for a 79 black Les Paul Custom in 1995. Oh my gosh. Hey buddy, I'll give you, I mean, those guitars are so expensive now. What are they? They're like $4,500 for those now. Do you have the chainsaw case too? Daniel, send me a message through the website or any of that. I'm leery to just give my email address out. I like all of you, but there are times that I already get too many emails that I can't answer. That's part of what I need help with, is an administrator or something. So, yeah. So Howard, Tex Haynes is talking about maple. Taylor's working with a few groups to raise quality maple trees from one of their suppliers. 37 acres of clear of mixed forest with 100 maple trees in it. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So anyway, coming back to that, maple is probably our best hope for acoustic guitars in the U.S. But anyway, oh Jeff, that's awesome. It's a brown leather case, still awesome. That is so cool. So yeah, so Glory Days guitars, all of that. Now the 30-year rule. So the easiest way for you to like buy these guitars wrong, either to buy the wrong guitar or to buy the guitar that you do want way too much, anyway, you get it. Is that you don't use the 30-year rule. So listen, the time in most people's lives that they feel the most like excited and nostalgic about later is almost always 18 to 25. So if you start looking at that time period, and then the guitars that always go up in value there's always this rolling curve between the guitars that people were super into between 18 and 25, 30 years later. So now they're 48 to 53, 55, and you get to where these are the guitars that people are now going to spend a bunch of money on. There are a bunch of reasons why. The big reasons why are people are nostalgic, and people at 48 to 55, their kids are finally out of college, they're getting married, they're moving out, they're not costing their parents as much money. Hopefully, maybe. That's the plan, the intention. And then also they're making more money than they've ever made, and they have more free time. So you look at more disposable income, feeling nostalgic, have more free time, and all of that culminates in they're going to start looking back to the guitars and the cars. This is a whole other, I don't talk much about cars. I love cars. And you start looking at the same thing. Like right now, my favorite vehicle I ever owned was a K5 Blazer, and now they are just bonkers. Like I owned one when I was 18. It was so cool. Hurricane Katrina happened, and my car that got 6 miles to the gallon was a bad choice for me when gas was $4 a gallon. The same thing happens with cars. So, and the way that I know that this is right is that 3 or 4 years ago, I was telling everyone I could, and I was buying everyone I could, guitars with locking trims are going to come back to being really cool. Guitars with super high gain pickups are going to be really cool again. Neon colors, handle, gems and RGs from Ibanez, old Hamer, old Kramer, LTD, ESP, all of these are going to go crazy. And what's cool is, so Tom, who's in here, Tom sent me one the other day that he's selling in Florida. Is it a Charvel? No. Or a Kramer. It's one of those, and they're asking, and they're not far off, they're asking $13,000. So the thing is, I know that as people get older, 48, 55, they are going to start looking, and they're going to drive up the values of these older guitars. So the thing is, if you miss the boat, there is coming a time where the price is just going to double, triple, quadruple, just blow up exponentially. I mean, it happens time and time again. So the next guitars, so think about who is in their like 40s now that in, 8 years to 15 years, they are going to be in that same spot. And so that is the people who played like Oasis, 90s alternative, some of the grunge guitars. And you're already starting to see this happen. Look at all the builders. Like Fano is one of them. Look at all the builders that are building Fender style, parts caster kind of guitars, short scale, gold foil pickups, Gretsch style, Day Armand style, TV Jones pickups, Filtertrons. I am telling you, these are going to blow up. And so there's always this kind of 35-year window in which, like, if you're trying, so if a couple of things to do with this. If you're someone who buys and sells guitars as a side hobby or a hustle, or you're in that world, you should always keep this in mind. And so, because it helps you not see the guitars that you do not care about, that you're not interested in. It helps you see them much better. The other thing is, another way to look at this is like punk rock guitars, like early punk guitars are starting to get really big now too. So anyway, that's years ago I realized that, and that's been like my biggest driving force when I start thinking of what guitars could I get now that will be worth more later. It is the 30-year rule. So Glory Days are guitars that are fun and iconic, and they are your adolescence perfectly distilled into a guitar that reminds you of great days behind you and helps you keep the dream alive. That's a little cheesy. I wrote that this afternoon, but I think it's generally true. Super cool. And all right. So that's the easiest way. We got 2 more. So the next one is, how do you buy a groundbreaker wrong? So first, a groundbreaker is a kind of guitar that is just completely new territory in your musicality and guitar playing. So it's weird. It has more strings or less strings. It has shorter strings or longer strings than what you're doing. It just moves you out of your comfort zone. So for me, I have a couple. The first one is my Pono octave mandolin. I'll show you this one. This is Tom's favorite instrument that I own. So this is a Pono, or Pono. And so this is an 8-string, looks like a ukulele. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, it's very out of tune. It got really warm the last couple days and my guitars have gone crazy. But, so this is my Pono. This is one of my groundbreakers. This is a thing that is like weird and different and makes me think upside down and backwards, and just totally refreshes my guitar playing. When I feel stagnant, when I feel stuck, that's the role of a groundbreaker. Force you to do something different. Now, other guitars that I've had in this, or other instruments I've had in this, what else would I put in my groundbreaker? The baritone, this Walden baritone back here, that Guild 8-string baritone that I'm going to buy. It forces you to use skills that you know and use them in different ways and think really hard about it. Yeah, Tom says it's an 8-string ukulele strung up wrong. You're right, yeah. It is, yeah, it actually really is. because it's made by a company that makes all mandolins, or sorry, all ukuleles basically. Zell says that explains why he bought a Sandemus Jackson Dinky reverse. Glory days, man. Nostalgia. More time. I mean, everyone in last year with COVID as well has just had way more free time to do stuff they haven't done before. So, okay. So with groundbreakers, there are a couple really easy ways that just get you in trouble. And they're kind of like when you first start buying, like when you're looking at the, what is it? At the Old Faithful kind of archetype. It's easy to get out of your lane. And when you get out of your lane, you don't know. And then there's also this real insecurity to not ever admit that you don't know something. And when you don't know and then you spend money, you almost always are going to spend too much money. So the big one, man, is don't do your homework. Come in unprepared, unaware, and just trust whoever's trying to sell you something. I'm not saying, I think overall, most guitar sellers are really helpful and they want to help you find the right thing and they're not trying to just get money out of your pocket. But anyway, sometimes it's just a little tricky if you're just like such an easy mark. So you also have to figure out like where you're going to head. So for me, it was 7 years ago, I realized that I was just in a rut in my guitar playing. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to really commit to learn to play another instrument. And I was torn between piano and mandolin. And because we had a small house and we had little kids, I was like, I'd rather do a mandolin that can be like portable and social and I can take it around with me and go out and about. So that's what I ended up doing. I jumped into mandolin and I loved it. And I just kind of committed myself. I'm going to give 6 months where I'm really going to go hard and I'm going to learn how to play this. So that's the first two. So one, don't do your homework. You buy the wrong thing. You don't know, like you don't have a plan. You just kind of wander and then because you don't feel particularly committed to it, you don't actually play it and you don't learn enough about it. And then all of a sudden you've got this thing you don't understand and you spent too much money for, and now you're trying to sell it. And it's just, anyway, it gets you in trouble. So make a plan, know what you're doing, and commit to learning, kind of hem yourself in. I know when I went to fingerstyle guitar playing, I said, I'm not going to use a pick for 6 months. Now I'm sure I used a pick at some point, but overall, I just got to where I could play guitar with my fingers. And it just, I mean, it has opened up a whole world to me. The last one is, these kind of work hand in hand. Like, you're trying to do your homework. You're trying to figure out how to make a right decision. And you are committed to learning about these guitars, but you find more trust or you take more trust and solace from specs rather than, they take too much specs and you trust too much on message board guidance. You might hear a theme in here of, I'm going to tell you to trust your gut more, trust your ear more, trust message boards and spec sheets a lot less. Don't let, I think if you'll just get yourself into a lot of trouble because you'll get loud opinions and you take those things as true. Dreadnoughts are always better. Rosewood has better bass response. And you just get yourself into it's just a bunch of baloney. So anyway, all that to say, with these, with the Groundbreaker, it's just going to take like a slow approach and find something cool and weird and different. And then just kind of be like, all right, I'm going to jump into this for a bit. So for me, so I started with a regular mandolin and then I got really into octave mandolins, but octave mandolins are freaking expensive. Like $3,000 and $4,000 for cheap ones. And so I finally found the Pono, which I got this one for $725 from Carter Vintage. Anyway, yeah. And okay, so I'll close out that thought. So if you're not growing, you are dying. And that doesn't mean like recklessly consume and call it growing in your guitar journey. You should have a wise and like active approach. But with that said, like find cool new things, try new things, commit yourself to them, and grow your musicality. So if your musicality isn't being expanded or refined, so either growing and picking up new things or really honing the skills that you have, you're probably going to give up. Because after a while, it's kind of like sitting down and listening to the same 3 records. Like, if you only know how to play a couple things, you're not learning new things, you're not getting new music, after a while, it just becomes not fun. And like the timeline between guitar not being fun and people giving up is pretty close. So you have to be careful. So anyway, all that to say, the Groundbreaker is the cutting edge of your skills, and it's incredibly fun. It reminds you of when you're first learning a new instrument, and like when you first learn guitar, and it's really fun and cool. And you should do it. All right, so the last one is the wild card. The wild card is just a bonkers, ridiculous, crazy thing that is just weird. And so that's the thing, is like lean into getting weird with it. Now the problem with this is they're going to pay too much by missing the trend. And so when I say the trend, like a couple years ago, when like Mumford & Sons and the Avett brothers, the Avett Sons and the Mumford brothers, when those guys first came out, so many people like jumped on the trend of learning to play banjo, and banjos were super cheap. You could find, like a basic brass tone ring banjo for $300 or so. But now you've totally missed the trend, and they're just so expensive. Man. So if you miss the trend, you're going to pay through the nose on the wild cards. The other one is that you buy too narrow, and there's no market to resell it if you don't like it, or just if gear comes and goes in your life. The biggest one, man, is as I think about what is it? I've had a couple pieces of gear where I'm like, this is weird. Okay, so someone 2 weeks ago offered me a guitar on a trade, and I could have been in it, not much money, but I knew that it would be a really hard thing to sell. So it was a custom luthier built, like really great quality. Basically, it was one of the Taylor 8-string baritones, but it was built to standard scale. So it's an 8-string guitar, and there were two things that immediately I realized. One, the simple one. I would never be able to find guitar strings. Every set of guitar strings would be a custom set of strings, which means, do I like it $25 a month? Because if I'm not playing it more than that, it's probably going to sit around, blah, blah, blah. So that was one that it's too narrow. Now the other one, so I have my Guild 5E3. So it's a Fender 5E3, like a hand-wired clone of a Fender Tweed Deluxe. And it is in a Guild J66 body. Let me grab it. I'll show you. Oh, it might be plugged in. You can kind of see it here. So it's this cool two-tone tweed thing. It is very cool, but it's weird. And so that's the thing. It's like, this is it's a wild card. It's, you'd have to explain it every time. You'd be like, well, it looks like it's a Guild amp, but it's actually a Fender amp. But even it's not even really a Fender amp because someone added an optical trim. And so it's basically like, has an MPEG tremolo circuit and so you have to be really careful when you buy these. You got to commit that we're like, oh boy, well, this is a weird one. And it's going to take a discerning buyer. It's kind of like continuing car analogies. Like, it's like having a Datsun 280Z that's had an LS swap, where you're like, it's weird. Like, it's a thing that everyone, and there's lots of parts for it, lots of people know how to work on it, but it's in a car that normally doesn't take in that direction. So it limits the amount of people that would want to buy it after you if you'd ever want to swap stuff around or move stuff. So, anyway. Now, the last one is if you buy an unsupported instrument. And they're not all unsupported, but they get complicated. Now, the biggest one I think about for this is buying guitars or instruments that there are not strings readily available. And I kind of mentioned that with that, like why I didn't get into that one custom luthier build. And I basically have this in two different guitars or two instruments. So my Pano octave mandolin is ball end, long scale octave mandolin strings. And so with that, yes, Diodario makes octave mandolin strings, but they're loop end. And so it's not very successful to add balls to them. I could change out the pins to the pins that have the thing where you put the loop around. But that, and then the other one is like with my Walden baritone, I went to restring that, and those strings, most of the strings on the market now are for a 30-inch scale, and so the string is too long. The low B string is too big. You can yank on it and get it to pull through, but all of that to say, man, that's the biggest thing, is that's the easiest way. You have to pay attention to the infrastructure behind a guitar. So when you see like a weird feature or a weird kind of setup. Anyway, I've been talking a lot, and so I want to jump in and we're going to do some Q&A. I did some stuff on Instagram, but this is your time to answer questions. So one of the questions I'll answer right away. So Daniel says, can Stringjoy make you custom strings? They can. They're just really expensive because you need 8 strings, and they charge when you're doing singles. Obviously, it's per string, and those are at retail price per string. And so I've ordered, actually, it has Stringjoy strings on it now, and it's had them for about 6 months, maybe longer than that. But it has these strings, and I think the strings are $28. So that's where I'm, and they're not coated, so they last as long as they last, which is not super long. And so that's where it's just tricky. The other one is baritone strings, like on the guitar, especially the Guild for the 8-string. Like you would have to buy a set of strings that's expensive, $20 usually for the baritone strings. Plus you'd have to buy 2 single strings, which wouldn't be that much money, like $1 or $2 a piece. But anyway, yeah, biggest mistake you can make is buying an Ovation. Preach it. That'll preach. Yeah, lots of people buy the wrong guitars first. Let me turn these off. So yeah, so we'll do a little bit of Q&A, and then here in a second I'll jump into the Instagram. To the questions that came in through Instagram. I have a hangnail, trying to not mess with it. Oh, so ZC says, what's my favorite travel or beater guitar? It always changes. I love the Martin LX1. I had an LXK, one of the Koa ones. I loved that guitar. I took that thing everywhere throughout college, after college. And yeah, I think they're super fun. I really like them. What else do we... So, all right, see you, Tom. Fun, man. Yeah, a guy at church the other day asked me, he's like, do you like Ovations? And I finally just had the courage to just be like, no, I don't. He's like, oh, okay. It's like, well, if you don't like them, they must be bad. It's like, yeah. Whew. Yeah, Jansen says, it's insane how much trust I've put in guitars prices without ever seeing or playing them. Yeah, you're playing a risky game, man. I don't know. I know it's weird. Like, I think there's 2 pendulums on that spectrum of like, you still all the time you hear like old guys say like, I'd never buy a guitar I didn't play first. You're like, okay, well that really limits the amount of guitars that you're gonna own or play. And then the other one being on the other end of like guys like you and I, that I can look at stuff, I can look at pictures, I can ask a couple questions, and then I'm pretty confident to buy a guitar. Yep. So James says, I bought a new reimagined D28 and the neck was clicking a bit. The store adjusted the truss rod and the click went away. If I flex the neck at the heel and bottom of the body, I still hear a small creak. It's probably the truss rod moving. A creak. I don't know. Because, I mean, it's glued in there. That's the thing is, like that neck, nothing should, like the wood should not be moving. So the neck to the body shouldn't be moving. Might be the truss rod. Might be a brace. Something that's come unglued. That's a crazy question. That's good. Mark Kidd says, how do I buy a guitar in South Africa? Love your YouTube. I don't know. I've never been to South Africa. Who's the guy? There's a guy that makes electric ukuleles in South America or in South Africa. That would be awesome. Jeff says ovations don't change tone. Will sound literally the same after 10 years. I think I would not be surprised if ovation guitars don't shoot up in price. And they already kind of have, like the Legend and the Celebrity ones have shot up because they play by the same rules as the 30-year rule, but they're also exaggerated in the 30-year rule because they're fan braced and so many have broken and not worked well. And so, so the other, so Guitar Squad says there's Duncan Africa. Yeah, so that's JD. And they're actually in Canada. The guitars are built in Africa, but they can sell you guitars in Africa. They're really wonderful guitars. And Rasmus says, do you know why Gibson braces always pop off? I don't know if they always pop off, but they are more frequent than others. I don't know. There's a lot to that. I'm not totally sure. Gibson guitars seem to not handle humidity as well as other guitars, especially when it gets really dry. So anyway, it is. Charlie Pritt says, "Is it a sign of a bad capo when it's placed on and the guitar is badly out of tune? Is it a bad practice to tune your guitar while a capo is installed?" It probably means a couple things. It means that there's too much tension. That's the obvious thing. It could also be your guitar. If your action is high and the capo comes down, it will really pull the guitar out of tune, and it's not actually the capo's fault. So I would check the action on your guitar and the relief on your truss rod, and if it's if your strings are too high. So that makes total sense. But there are capos. Usually, it's also like when you look at how many strings are being pulled too sharp, because usually your E and your A, if you're using a Kaiser, it's going to pull those so tight and then leave the others. Like I used to have a capo that was so bad that the E and the A would be like, 20 or 30 cents sharp. And then on the other side, they would just buzz out and not work. And so anyway, the other one is make sure that your capos, if you're using a cheaper capo, make sure that it is radiused. Because I know like my brother-in-law years ago bought what he thought was a Kaiser on Amazon. And it showed up and it was just dead flat. And it would have worked for a classical guitar. But anyway. So is it a bad practice to tune your guitar while capo is installed? No, it's not. I do that all the time, especially when I'm playing in church. So I'll put the capo on. So I'll mute myself. I'm stomping my foot. You can't see that. So I'll mute the pedal. I'll move the capo where I want it to be, and then while I have it muted in tune and in tuning mode, I'll then tune up, and that way I'm just totally in. Now, one of the things I've realized, and this is totally a side thought, I like to be in tune all the time, but I also play with a real piano that is rarely actually in tune. And so it's way harder. To stay in tune unless you're like, hey, give me an E. And so anyway, sometimes I pay attention on my tuner. Like, all right, so it's 10 cents sharp. So I'll just tune everything just a tick sharp. Hello, Internet. Do I worry about the fan bracing in my Waterloo? By the way, that thing is gorgeous to look at and listen to. It's not fan bracing, it's ladder bracing. So it's super strong structurally. It's probably technically a little overbraced, which is why it gives it such a boomy and thick tone. So ovations are probably the most common guitars that are fan braced, and that's why almost every single one of them is cracked on the top. Is just fan bracing is not meant for steel string guitars. Favilla is another really common guitar that uses fan bracing. I don't know of many others that use proper fan bracing other than the classical. But David just ordered a Lug for your 4-year-old son who's super interested. Any tips for replacement strings on those? I do. So I've been working on a video for them. I actually have all 3 of the Lugs over here. So here are 2 of them. And let me bring this one. And so if you don't know, a lug is... Alright, it's not... So the lug is basically tuned G, B, E. So it's like, I mean, basically a D or the bottom strings. Anyway, so the thing I found is they come with incredibly cheap strings first round. And I looked to see like what strings they recommend. They don't tell you what gauges they are, so I just need to get a caliper and measure them. I'm assuming, I mean, I don't really know, but I think they would do way better because they seem to be good quality instruments if they had good strings on them. They're just really cheap strings, and so that's my first thing. So the gripe that I have, and so I haven't finished filming this video yet. I've done the first setup. I haven't done my actual like thoughts and review yet, but my impression so far is that is the place that they're skimping the most, and then it's a place that they think they're going to get a lot of money in recurring support for that instrument. So they sell sets of strings. They're 3-packs of each set of strings, and they're $19 a piece with $5 shipping. The shipping might go away, but what I found is no one buys 3 sets of guitar strings at a time. So it's just an interesting, like, not the right. It's just a weird part of their market. You can tell, like, they're not actually like a guitar company. They're kind of having stuff made for them, anyway. But overall, the quality's good on them. I like them. I think they're fun. They're incredibly playful, and my kids love them. And they, like, these are already, like, dinged and banged up. And but, I mean, my kids love them. So I'm ready to get them back out there to them. I need to finish the video. I'll do that, like my Pink Paisley Telly. I'll just keep saying that I'm going to do a video. I'll do it next week. But all that to say, I think if you, I'll figure out the gauges, and then in my video I'll just post them with it, and you could just do single strings, because basically, like, you could get 3 sets of single strings. So 1 6-string easy, just run extra lights. The next one you could get just the 3 single strings from a guitar shop or String Joy or whomever. And then same thing with the classical strings. The only thing on the nylon strings is they would need to be ball end. So anyway, not the end of the world. Sonia, the crack is topped on yours. Yep, that makes sense. Do I like the Taylor V-Class bracing? I don't know enough about it. So I think I'm getting a Taylor AD17. I believe that has V bracing. Does it? Someone, let me Google this real quick. AD17. Yeah, I think I'm going to get an A17 black top. And we'll see what kind of bracing that guitar has. Specs. Yeah, this has V-Class bracing. So this will be the first guitar that I've had that has the V-Class bracing. So that's what I want to get, because I'm just convinced that there's so much of a tone to a guitar that you don't actually see. So anyway, let me jump in here. So there were a couple questions that came through on Instagram. I want to go through these. So the first one is, what do you use when cleaning your fretboard during string changes? I do 3 things. The main thing I do is I use like a plastic brush. I got it at Home Depot. It's just a not a steel brush, not an abrasive one, only on rosewood, not on any finished fingerboards. Ebony, rosewood. I just clean that to get most of the stuff off. And then if the frets are dirty themselves, I have super high, is it 2000 grit? It's incredibly high sandpaper that just cleans the frets off really well. And with that, it doesn't do anything, doesn't touch the fingerboard at all. When I say touch, Like, it doesn't remove any material. It's not going to do anything to the fingerboard because it's such a high grit, but it just cleans up the frets themselves. And then I use lem oil on top of that. Yeah, so I have like the Dunlop lem oil. This is what I use for pretty much every fingerboard. Now with that, I don't do that every time, but I just kind of clean it off and make it when things really need it. There are a few things that look better than a well-oiled fingerboard, especially on like on rosewood. You'll bring out a bunch of texture and grain that you didn't see, and then on ebony it just gets jet black and wonderful. So anyway, James says, is it possible for the truss rod to have bad seating inside the neck and for some of the clicking sounds? Truss rod to have bad seating inside the neck. When I flex the neck mildly, the clicking sound is gone. If I can hear the... Sheesh, I wouldn't do any of the flexing that you're talking about. Because I'm sure if someone flexed me, I would make some pops and crackles. And yeah, I would be really careful with that. I think you might be in your head a little bit. If you can like shake the guitar and it rattles, or if you're playing and it rattles. Now, other things that it could be the most common culprit would be one of the washers on top of the string on the tuners. If those aren't tight, those will buzz. I've had that hundreds of times, and I usually don't pick up on it the first time. I'm like, what is wrong with this? This is weird and broken and crazy. And then anyway, so Daniel has an 8027E, the mahogany top. All American Dreams have V-Class. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think I'm going to get that. So that'll come from Sweetwater. That'll be my first V-Class bracing guitar, and should be really, really cool. The Paige Guitars video is coming out next week. I'm in the throes of editing it, and it's going to be kind of a complicated video to put together. But it's awesome because there's some really great drone shots, and then there's amazing quality. And then this is it back here. So one of them came home with me, so if I need any more music, I can kind of put it in there. Any trips to Nashville coming up? Are the guitar showrooms open yet? We have some family stuff going in Nashville this summer, so I'm sure I'll be in Nashville once or twice this summer. And so that is the plan, to go hang out and spend some time. And I'm going to go see Jesse, who is an old friend. We don't know each other super well, but we've known each other for a long time. Jesse at Artisan Guitars. I'm super excited to see him. There's also I want to go to North American Guitar because my friend Terry has just said amazing things about them, and I've never actually been there. I want to go see my friend Bo at Carter Vintage, and I think most of those are basically open, probably still maybe masks, maybe not masks, maybe social distancing. I don't know, but I think people are ready to get back to making some money, and not that those two are mutually exclusive, like being safe and making money, that those aren't mutually exclusive. Anyway, I've painted myself into a corner. Okay, so next question is, what are some of the guitar YouTubers you enjoy? Builds, repairs, collectors, musicians. So I love Rhett. I love Rhett's videos, and we've become good friends through the years. He was so super generous to me when I first was getting started doing YouTube, and like had me on his podcast and gave me tons of pointers. And he's still like one of my favorite content creators, because he's just so cool and so fun. So Rhett is definitely at the top of that list. I also really like, who else? Zach from Mythos Pedals. He needs to do a lot more videos. He's so fun on Instagram, Zach Broyles. He and I just like get each other on a funny, deep level. I think just like growing up in really redneck communities, but somehow not being redneck, he and I just really get each other a lot. And I love seeing him. Other guitar YouTubers I really love. What's his name? Robert Baker. He and I kind of message back and forth on Instagram, and I just think he's just has such a cool like style and aesthetic to how he makes his videos look, and he's super approachable. I'm a big fan. Yeah. I need to watch more. I recently have gotten into Gear Gods. My favorite channel is still Finn McKenty's channel, the Punk Rock MBA, because I also love marketing. And so he does such a great job at saying, like, how did this genre die? What was this scene? He's so good. at that stuff, and he's been a pretty good friend. He's also been a friend through the years, as I've been trying to get my head around what I'm doing. So have I tried Faith guitars? I haven't. They're really hard to find in the States. I can reach out to them. I'm trying, like, on my top list of guitars that I keep getting asked about, and I'm trying to work with Eastman. Eastman continues to say, which is fine. They continue to say that I don't have enough subscribers or enough influence. Whatever, that's fine. I'm also continuing to kind of look for, other guitar brands. Furch Guitars is hot on my list. I also have another Boucher coming in a couple weeks that'll be really fun. Drew says I should check out the new Gibson Garage. That'd be super fun. I would love to do that. I really, really, really want to try some of the new Gibson acoustics, like the Texan, the Country Western, the Southern Jumbo, just all of those, like the new reissues, or like the 60s spec. I feel like they're finally doing a thing that Fender has nailed so well for so long. Like, give me a guitar that looks and feels like it's from the 60s for less than one of those would cost me now, and I get to play it all the time. Casino guitars are great too. I like those guys a lot. I think we take shared inspiration. I think we kind of view the world pretty similarly, and we'll each put out videos that kind of feel around the same kind of vibe. Do I watch the Acoustic Tuesday show? I don't watch it every week, but Tony, it's cool, man. Now that, as people are asking me, like, I now have talked to or know and like am friends with. Like, Tony is actually a good friend of mine. Like, I really like him, and we text a lot. We rarely talk first about guitars. It's usually about like kids and being a dad and hiking and living close to a national park and just being friends. And And Tony has done so much of what I really love about acoustic guitar culture. I think, to me, I view what I want to do with Guitar Hunter is so perfectly in tandem with what Acoustic Life is trying to do, or Tony's Acoustic Challenge. Because Tony's Acoustic Challenge is learn how to play guitar and build friends along the way. And I think it's like we're both about music and friendship and like community. I think for him, he's so great on the lesson side. And for me, I view myself as so much aimed at like find the right guitar, wheeling and dealing, negotiating, get the right guitar. And also Andertons, I love that channel. I mean, that's just one of my favorites. I miss Rob Chapman. I miss seeing him as much. I really like Danish Pete. Is it Danish Pete? Yes, Danish Pete. Because there's a guy that I know now whose Instagram name is Dutch Pete. Don't think they know each other. But anyway. How much did you spend on guitar parts, and what determines their worth? Man, those are two really good questions. 10 years ago, there was no market for parts guitars. I think this is also an early warning, an early confirmation of what is to come with the bigger guitar market, especially around the 30-year rule, because parts casters were really big in the early 90s. Like, really highly customized guitars. So look at like Kurt Cobain's Jagstang. Look at Billy Joe Armstrong, his like Strat with a big humbucker. Look at Tom DeLonge's Strats early on, like Strats with big white pick guards and then humbucker. So anyway, all that, I just think, man, I think that we're just right on with so I think we're coming to a place where people are okay with that. There was a long trough in which there was not a market for a parts caster. That if you like, I'm going to spend $300 on a body and $200 on a neck and $100 on pickups and then a harness, and all of a sudden you're in at $800, and there is not a single chance that you're going to sell that guitar. And I still think that it's tricky. I think it is a hard thing to do to make it and ever get your money back out of it. Dutch Pete. So, Pete, there's a guy on a guitar channel on Andertons. His name was Pete Honore, and he is from Denmark originally. He's lived in the UK, I think, since 2001 or something. Amazing guitar player. He used to work for Mesa Boogie and Gibson and a bunch of others. But now he makes videos for Andertons TV. And but his tag is like people call him Danish Pete, and you're Dutch Pete. So anyway. a parts caster. I would be wary of being in a parts caster unless it's like a small part of your financial world that doesn't risk your family's well-being and like you can justify it, because you would still be able to build a much better guitar usually than you could buy, up to about $1,000. Above that, if you haven't built one too, you also need to really have a good trusted sales or tech or repair person that can help you tweak it, set it up, get it together, make sure that, because going from a bunch of parts put together to a functioning guitar, there's a lot in between those two. So anyway, that is a really, really good question. And what determines what they're worth? What people are willing to pay for them. Now, there are big complications with this now. It's not hard to find a water slide decal that says Fender, but now Reverb has like software that scans their website, and like any parts caster that has a Fender decal on it that is misrepresenting what it is will be taken down. Everyone, I've had maybe 3 or 4 in the last 5 years. I haven't used Reverb in a couple of years, really. But it makes it really tricky to sell. So if you live in a bigger market where you can get more people to pay, anyway. Are Maiden guitars popular in the U.S. with the likes of Tommy Emmanuel playing them and performing? They are not. I have never actually seen one in real life other than at Gruen and Carter. I've never seen someone playing a Maiden in the U.S. I have seen them forever on YouTube videos and on the internet. I've even, so their chief distributor in the U.S., he and I have texted back and forth. They want me to, get a Maiden and make a video about it and talk about it and help them sell more of them. And it's just not, I don't know. I mean, COVID's been a weird year, so it's been a weird time. But anyway. Oh, man, 5-watt world. Keith also, he emailed me a couple months ago. Just super sweet. And I think he's just an expert. He is such a wonderful historian. JHS is the other obvious one. I think JHS is probably my favorite guitar YouTube now because I love the history of things. And I didn't really grow up paying too much attention to pedals. Like, I was in, like, punk rock bands, hardcore bands, metal bands. None of those are real pedal kind of brands or pedal kinds of music. Like, I wasn't interested in, like, alt as far as playing it. So I'd never used phasers and chorus and all that. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I started building out bigger pedal boards, paying more attention to pedals. But JHS and Josh is just so good. He's such a gift to the guitar community. All right. Anyway, sorry, Andrew, this is such a great question. There's so much to it. It's really tricky coming out of it. What are my favorite string brands? Pros and cons. Maybe how they react with different guitars. Electric guitars, so I'm going to speak in like very broad terms. Electric guitars, you have pure nickel strings, and then you have nickel steel strings, and everybody's kind of in a mix of those two. There is not a huge difference in tone, in my opinion, and I know that people disagree with me, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't think that there is a ton of difference in the sound of electric guitar strings. I think there is a huge difference in the feel of guitar strings. For me, personally, my favorite strings on Strats and Tellys, on Strats and Tellys, if I can, I love the Fender Pure Nickel or the Stringjoy Broadways. Like, I just think cool, old, really original, vintagey sounding strings. They're very subtle. Those are my favorite pure nickel strings. And then I love, on humbucker guitars and guitars that I want to be like fun and spunky, I love super slinkies. I love regular slinkies. Probably regular slinkies are my favorite kinds of electric guitar strings. So that's kind of electric guitar strings. Acoustic guitar strings, there's broadly 3 camps. There were usually 2 for a long time, and now there really is a third option. So you would have 80-20 bronze, and then you would have phosphor bronze. Phosphor bronze is typically 92% copper and 8% tin. And so for me, 80-20 strings are punchy and present and loud. And there's certainly a place for them. They're not my favorites, but there's definitely a place for them. Phosphor bronze are much more my style. Think Diodario, think Martin SPs, think Diodario EXPs, think the Elixir Nano Webs are typically phosphor bronze. To me, they are warm, they're dynamic, they're really fun. They live a long time. They bring out a lot of bass in your guitar. They kind of make your guitar come alive rather than just being loud. And so that's the big one. So the next one, the third camp, so you have 80-20 bronze, phosphor bronze. The third one is now, if you would call it Monel, if you would call it nickel bronze. So it's these higher nickel ratio strings. They look like kind of a darker gray. They look like acoustic guitar strings, or sorry, they look like electric guitar strings. These have become my favorites. I think it's just because I was so tired of the other two that I was kind of welcoming something new and something different. So for me, the Diodario nickel bronze, amazing strings. Really like them. Anyway, and they react very differently to different guitars. I think on smaller body guitars, you could do an 80-20 and get punchy and loud, but you're gonna miss out on some bass. So phosphor bronze typically feels warmer to me and has more low end response. John Pierce are also an amazing phosphor bronze strings. I think those are made by GHS, but I'm not totally sure. But anyway, so that's generally thoughts on strings. I think there's only a couple more questions left. Thoughts on using finger picks? I can never find ones that fit. Get metal ones. You can bend them to your fingers. I don't use them on my fingers. The only one I ever use is a thumb pick, and even then, it's very, very rare for me to use thumb picks. It's just kind of outside of my wheelhouse, but I think you absolutely should. Old guitars. Just talk about old guitars. Old guitars are not necessarily good guitars. Their correlation does not equal causation. Old does not mean good. Old does not mean sounds better or plays better. Usually old means doesn't sound as good and doesn't play as well. Usually. If you look at like all old guitars, old Silvertones, old Harmonies, the kinds of guitars that normal people like you and me would find when someone's grandma says, I have an old guitar that's been in the attic for 40 years. So anyway, some old guitars are great, but I think more often than not, old is used to mean more money. And so I would be really careful with that. I think we are in the golden age now. Guitars are better now than they ever have been. And I think you can get so much, like middle of the road Yamahas for $500 are astoundingly good. Almost every Alvarez that you would pick up is better than most American-made guitars from 20, 30 years ago. We're just in the best. Old guitars, over 20 years, but even then 20 years is actually pretty recent. 20 years ago is 2001. Goodness. I was a freshman in high school. And so 20 years is, 20 years would be Les Paul Classics, which that's kind of funny because it's, anyway. But I would say I'd say in the 90s are kind of old. You get to like Strat Pluses, Tele Ultras, that kind of thing. So anyway. So Peter says, when is the best time to do for a private consult? Have some guitar divestment questions that need more without burning live chat, folks. There's a form on my website. It's the Let's Talk form. So go to Jeremy the Guitar Hunter. Top right, you'll see an orange button. It says Let's Talk. Send me your info in there, and we'll schedule a time. I do guitar consulting. If you need help finding the right guitar, avoiding the wrong guitar, selling guitars, all that stuff, we can work out a time. And I have kind of an hourly rate that I can coach you through the process of selling. I can also sell on consignment, all that stuff. All right. What's the difference between a D41 and a D42? The inlays are the main thing. The top, or not the top, but the shade on the top. Usually 41s don't have aging toner, and the 42s do have aging toner. Also on a 41 is going to be hexagon inlays, like the one I have. You can't see it anymore because I moved the titles. Oh, there it is. So it's going to have abalone hexagon inlays on the fretboard. It's going to have abalone around the top. A 42 will have snowflake inlays, not the hexagon inlays, And then the other thing is the bracing. The 42 has scalloped bracing and the 41 doesn't. I think. I'm pretty sure. 8 out of 10 confidence on that. Okay. That's a great question. Lots of differences there. Anything Isabel. I played that at the beginning. So let me get this guitar from Paige Guitars again. And that about wraps our time. We'll do 2 more shirts. 2 more trivia today. I also totally forgotten I didn't send the trivia shirts last week. I'm very sorry. I will send them as soon as I can. Let's play some Isabel for David. Right? This was you, David, right? Smooth jazz, Dave. What else? What's an obscure Isbell that I know? Ooh, I got one. Gotta go to Dad again, though. All right, so this is your last chance for questions. So James said, Jeremy, try out a Maiden plugged in when you get a chance. Absolute beast of a guitar. That's what I've always heard. So my brother lives in Australia, and he had a Maiden, and he asked me to help him sell it, or like how I would sell it, and I helped him out, and he sold it really quickly. Jeez, this is such a good guitar. Ben, are you in here? If Ben Patches is in here. This is... Oh boy, my battery died. Hold on. Don't you freak out. We're good. Don't freak. Be cool, man. Be cool. We're right at the end. We're just about done. And we're back! Do I know what kind of braces the LGO has? They're spruce, and they're ladder braced. So that's different days, but it's in Dadgad, so it's because normally it'd be like, I can't do it. Anyway, it would be different, but it's... Do you ever say something that just feels so unhelpful to the question you were asked or to what you were trying to say? Anyway, okay, let me think of 2 trivia questions, and we'll do t-shirts this week. And so that means I have 4 shirts to send out because I forgot to send out the ones from last week. Sorry, I'm just getting distracted. Yeah, Different Days is so good. Like all good Jason Isbell songs is about like a friend overdosing. I broke the law, boys, shooting out the windows of my loft, boys. When they came for me, I made a big noise. Nothing but the blue sky in my eyes. Anyway, okay, let me think of 2 trivia questions. I feel like this is the place where I feel like I would be the most helpful to have a producer. Like someone just sitting off camera that's just saying like, oh, that's an interesting thing you said, and here's an interesting thing someone else said. There was a guitar that I showed as an example of one of the kinds of guitars that I bought recently that fit into those categories, and I said I'm not happy with it and I think I'm going to sell it. Which one was that? Which guitar did I say I was unhappy with and I think I want to sell? It is not my Waterloo. It was, so I'll tell you which guitar I was talking about. It was my contender for the, what did I call it? For the Old Faithful. Patrick. So Patrick got it. So Patrick got it. It's my Martin. It's my Martin D41. I bought that guitar because it showed up. It should be right. The price was right, and it still hasn't ever. I haven't connected with it as far as playing. Like I don't dream about it, you know. So okay, that's one trivia question. So the next trivia question, this one might be hard, but do I want to ask that? Hang on. Sheesh. This guitar is so good. So good. Okay. I guess I can turn these off now. Okay, so that was the one trivia question. So, who was it? Patrick. Patrick, go to my website, fill out the form, give me your info, tell me what size shirt you wear, and I'll send it to you. And the next one... What country did I say my brother lives in? Rafi got it. Raphael. All right. That was good. All right, Raphael. So go to my website, fill out the form, send me your info, what size shirt you want. All right. So how did my brother wind up in Australia? So he and I grew up. It's kind of amazing. Neither of us thought that we would follow this path, but both of us, it's amazingly full circle. So he and I grew up. We were just the epitome of just like silly, ridiculous fun, like little kids. And so we grew up recording everything we did. So I would always have a camera. He would always have a recorder. And so he would record audio and I would make videos. And we would always just do dumb, fun stuff together. We were in that like CKY and Jackass. That was what we were into. And then both of us kind of grew up. We were in a bunch of bands together. And he went to college, I went to college, and we kind of moved away. And obviously he's my brother, so we've stayed close. But he went to school and got really into audio production, got really into podcasting. And after school, he moved to DC and he worked for, I think, in conjunction with NPR and some stuff. And then just in the last little bit, he has moved, I guess not last little bit. He moved, his job was ending in DC, and there was a girl who he really liked in Australia. And he was thinking about moving to Australia, and he's like, but when would I ever get a job offer in Australia? And then basically his contract didn't get picked up in Australia for some international school he was doing stuff with. Like, well, we actually have an opening in Sydney. So he's like, okay, I'm moving to Sydney. So he moved, it's a while, like 2013, he moved to Australia. He actually just became a citizen. And so he moved down there. He now works, he does, is it Planet Money? He works on a podcast, and so he is like perfectly doing like audio recording and the stuff that he's just so good at and loves. And and then so for me, I wound up getting back into cameras and video and making silly videos, which I make less silly videos now, but it is just really fun using the skills that we had like when we were 8, and now we've come full circle where both of us are taking care of our families by music and recording. Well, sorry, taking care of our families with like creativity and music and production, like audio and video. So anyway, man, this was a really fun one. We went, holy cow, it's one. This is an hour and 45 minutes. This is the longest live show I've ever done. Yeah, it's good to not be rushed. And I'm glad that this worked out. So, both of you who won, who was the other one that won? It was Patrick and somebody else that won. So go to the website, fill out the form. I'll get those packed up today. I will, I promise. All right, y'all are the absolute best. This is so fun. Have a great week. Go fill the world with music and friendship. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not. There's a pretty direct line between you being subscribed and YouTube paying me more. Costs you nothing. Helps me take care of my family. And so, anyway. All right, y'all are the best. Have a great week. All right, see you.